Nurses and speak for the dead. They just want to bring the trees alive. It's new life.
Hi, I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read. Speaker for the Dead by Orson Card is a masterful work of art, one of the all-time great accomplishments in science fiction, and sequel to the legendary Ender's Game. Published in 1986, Speaker for the Dead surpasses Ender's Game in scope and sensitivity, presents alien-feeling aliens, a story of redemption, and terrific suspense. This is the second time for me reading this novel, and while it's hard to quantify, considering I last read this 30 years ago, this is very likely the greatest reading experience I've ever had. I recommend Speaker for the Dead if you've read Ender's Game long ago and you're willing to reread it again. Reading it twice and knowing exactly who Ender Wiggin is, empathizing with him, loving him, rooting for him, will set you up for a profound emotional experience with this sequel. I recommend Speaker for the Dead if you love science fiction and you've read a lot lately that was just okay, and you need something that will knock your socks off. I recommend Speaker for the Dead if you want a book that will stir your emotions with characters that you care so much about that you're going to wish they were real so you could hold them and just tell them that everything will be okay, and aliens that feel so real you want to embrace them as well and tell them, I understand you. I recommend this novel if you love space opera, anthropologic sci-fi, imagination of highly advanced AI and relativistic time considerations. Finally, I recommend Speaker for the Dead, even if you weren't gaga for Ender's Game. 6-year-old Ender is no longer traveling to battle school to test his leadership abilities. Ender is a deeply mindful, mid-30s wise man, 3,000 years removed from when and where we last saw him. This review will remain spoiler-free until the end when I get into my 5 selected likes and dislikes and a few words about the author. Comment below if you have thoughts about Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead, or about the author. Ender's Game introduced the character of Ender Wiggin, a young child raised in a world at war with a superior alien race, the Buggers. The Buggers have adapted to everything that humanity has thrown at them, and the only thing left for the Earth to try is to raise genius kids, send them to battle school, test their skills, and find the next great leader. The one who will shoulder the load and face the Buggers with the unpredictable and save all of humanity. Ender's Game follows Ender's journey through battle school and his role in the Bugger War. Speaker for the Dead picks up 3,000 years later. The Buggers are way old news. Ender Wiggin, likely presumed long dead, is in the history books as a despised stain on all of humanity. His name is reviled. They call him Ender the Xenocide. What they don't know, and we do know, is Ender has written a book, or 2 books in one, called The Hive Queen and the Hegemon, an almost spiritual historical text speaking the truth and depth of the Bugger race, as well as his insights into humanity and its never-ceasing quest for greatness. Having spent much of his time in lightspeed travel, 3,000 years have passed for everybody else, and only decades have passed for Ender. Ender now spends his days as a speaker for the dead. This started long ago when his brother Peter, the Hegemon, now long dead, asked Ender to speak the truth of his life. Speaking for the dead is equivalent to researching and investigating one's life and deeply eulogizing them and speaking the truth, including the uncomfortable and inconvenient, and the impact of their life. As compelling as Ender was in Ender's Game, his character is even more well-rounded in Speaker. Ender presents as a man who, despite his maturity, calm, brilliance, and confidence, still feels deeply the scars of his deranged childhood. The only other returning cast is Ender's sister Valentine. Valentine continues to represent Ender's lifeline to any kind of normalcy, family, unconditional love. The new cast includes many interesting characters that Ender will meet when he travels to a colony that's called Lusitania. Significant about Lusitania is it is home to the Pequeñinos, also referred to as the Piggies, the only alien race besides the Buggers that humanity is aware of. The human colony, descendants of Brazilian Christians, are separated from the Piggies by a huge electrified fence. The only humans authorized to cross the gate are the xenologists studying the Piggies. when Ender comes to town to speak the death of at least one of the former xenologists, no one's, and I mean no one's, secrets will be safe. The reader is confronted with an important Lusitanian family, with one member evoking more of our sympathies than the next, a heavily religiously influenced society, theories, assumptions, and judgments of the native piggies, and visceral and chilling anticipation surrounding the mystery of Ender Wiggin and the question, will anybody discover who this speaker for the dead really is? There are other complex characters that I'm intentionally leaving out, as discovering them is part of the fun, especially if you're a fan of creative AI elements in your science fiction. I'll no longer be leaving out spoilers or my 5 likes and 5 dislikes for the phenomenal, riveting, gut-wrenching Hugo and Nebula award-winning sequel to the Hugo and Nebula award-winning Ender's Game, The Speaker for the Dead. Like number 1, the anticipation. When are they going to discover he's the Ender Wiggin? Will anybody find out? And when it's revealed, I won't be able to contain myself. How do you read this book and not sit on the edge of your seat waiting for this moment? Dislike number 1. As delicious as it was the first time that Ender's true identity was revealed, there were definitely a few missed opportunities to dip back into that same well again. It would not have been overkill. Dislike number 2, sticking with this theme, I love that Ender doesn't enter into the story until chapter 2 and is introduced as Andrew Wiggin rather than Ender. Part of me wishes that he would have just been introduced without his last name, just to build a little bit more confusion and to make the reveal that he is Ender the Xenocide land a little harder for the first-time reader. It still lands well, but rereading this, I can almost feel how cool that reveal would have been. I also would have preferred there to be even more confusion around Rooter and Peepo's death. I wouldn't have minded if there were fewer hints around why the murders maybe weren't so nefarious. Like number 2, despite my preference for more confusion, one of the great things about the Speaker for the Dead reading experience is how quickly it's obvious that Ender's Game Part 2 is going to be an unputdownable read. The feeling never wanes. Like number 3, Jane, the artificial intelligence born from the ether, the Ansible connections through space between worlds, it's fascinating. Her relationship with Ender as a stand-in for Valentine, perhaps, is charming, but it's the idea that she evolved from technology that's most exciting. In the next sequel, Xenocide, the idea is expanded upon and is even more interesting. Like number 4, the complexity of the characters. I could spend an hour just talking about Ender. I absolutely believe that this damaged, abused, used child grew up to be this always in his head, rational, confident but wounded speaker of deep truths. I truly love that the choice was made that Ender would be considered the loathed Xenocide. To have his name so stained even in death, or rather perceived death, takes my empathy for this character to new heights. I believe and I feel the pain, the bad choices, and the intentions of Novena. I understand the pain and behavior of her family, and I appreciate the nuance of the personalities of the bishop and of the mayor. Like number 5, the treatment of the Hive Queen. I of course love that planning the Hive Queen on this new world will represent part of the personal feeling of redemption that we also strongly desire for Ender. There was very little interaction between Ender and the Queen, obviously because she's in a cocoon, but the little bit that we get of her not clear, slightly telepathic messaging is really well done. Dislike number 3, how quickly Miro and the AI Jane take to each other is sort of rushed, and it's way too convenient and it's unearned, and it's just this like sort of not quite organic, feel-good, happy ending moment. Dislike number 4, as great as reading Speaker for the Dead is the first time, it's the second read, years removed, that is superior. Those who loved Ender's Game coming in with expectations for more of the same are going to be uncomfortable, and it might take 100 pages or so to just get a good footing in the story. In a second rereading of this book, or a second reading of this book, starting with the appropriately matched expectations, the novel reaches its full potential as a near-perfect reading experience. I feel bad for those who might miss out if the new setting turns them away from the book prematurely. This is a random thought more than it is a dislike. Bonus like. In Ender's Game, I loved Ender's flawlessness when facing opposition. Where that continues in Speaker without it being cliche is his ability to read and direct other humans. In Ender's Game, it was in actual battle. In Speaker, it's in reading and communicating with others. There's such a comfort in knowing this character so well that Any situation that he walks into, we know he's going to be the victor. There's enough compelling conflict and ambiguity in the book that Ender's perfection never works against the story. Bonus, like. Though it becomes clear before the reveal that the scientists are ignorant of the relationship between the piggies, the trees, and the Descolada virus, Ender chastising the biologists for their prejudices in some part influenced by the Christian society, is either unexpected or at least further than I expected this author, well known for prejudices that he condones and promotes by pointing to religion, to go. Dislike number 5, for me, it wouldn't feel right to praise this work as the amazing piece of art that it truly is without also distinguishing the art from the artist. When I first read the Enders series, I was not aware that Orson Card was virulently homophobic. It is more recently that I've reviewed Card's articles, his speeches, and his actions that were meant to dehumanize gay people and actually to promote anti-gay legislation. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Leverts, and this is Fit to be Read.